Well, thank you very much, Brian. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight as part of this shift that's about to happen here in London. And clearly, based on what I've seen, London is looking at making a shift in planning, making a shift in thinking, making a shift in building, making a shift in positioning itself as a competitive city in which to live and work, and making a shift in moving around the city. And the time is right. I mean, when you think of London, a city approaching 400,000 in population, with transit ridership that's growing rapidly, my purpose here tonight is really to position this shift in a national context, to give you a sense of how it fits within other visions that are happening around urban development and public transit, and also with regards to public rapid transit projects over the last 60 years across Canada. So just by way of context, thanks for the introduction, Brian. Our association, the Canadian Urban Transit Association, is a national group representing the entire public transit community. Public sector, private sector, the transit systems, the suppliers, the manufacturers, the government agencies that have helped to build and operate bus, rail and ferry systems in cities across Canada for the last 110 years. Now, I talked about a vision, and really want to spend a couple of minutes acquainting you with our national vision, which is about 5 years old now, and really was intended to paint a blueprint for how public transit can optimize its role in mobility in Canadian communities. And it was really trying to determine how Canadians want to move around their cities in the next 30 years. So the time horizon is 2040. It's a human generation. And the research that was done here really to look at what the economic trends are, what the environmental trends are, what the demographic trends are that are likely to shape the future of our cities. And what did we find? Well, first of all, society in 2040 is going to look quite different from what it does today. Cities are going to keep growing, the population will age, immigration will be huge, and there'll be lots of changes to our lifestyles. Some smaller communities in rural areas will decline because of increased migration to cities, but mobility will always be a big issue. Road congestion isn't going to go away, especially in our biggest cities. There's going to be uncertainty still about energy. It's going to get cleaner. Obviously, we're going to have new technology that will make a big difference. But perhaps the most important is the growing support for sustainable lifestyles, changing those lifestyles. And we're seeing that already, I think, especially with the younger generations that are looking to live closer to work, live closer to school, be less dependent on a car, wait much later in life to get driving licenses. And our cities and their planning needs to adapt to that, which is why I'm so delighted to see the direction in which the London plan has been going. So there are 6 themes to this blueprint, to this Transit Vision 2040. The first is all around how we build our cities. It's integrating our places with our transportation. It's making that planning one together so that the transportation we build fits with our places and our places fit with the transportation. Putting transit at the center of communities. Number 2 is it's all about service. And it's about maximizing and optimizing the quality of that service that transit can provide. Number 3 is putting the customer in the middle. It's all about moving customers, it's all about providing a service that's attractive and that meets the needs of its customers. Number 4 is our own footprint, our environmental footprint, and making sure that transit itself is as green as it can be. And that may mean electric buses, that may mean more efficient procurement, that may mean a lot of things, but it's recognizing that transit also has to look at its environmental footprint. Number 5 is sustainable funding, both for building the systems as well as operating them. And finally, being at the cutting edge of knowledge and practice in all areas, and sharing that from one community to another. Now, there are lots of indicators that are tracking our progress over that 30-year period, but the one overarching one is something we call per capita ridership. And it's actually very simple. It's the average number of transit trips per resident in a community. And there are targets here that are aligned with different city sizes, because obviously a small community isn't going to have the same potential that a large city does. And London would be in the medium-sized city category, and you can see here the target is 85 rides in 2040, from a base of 40 rides about 5 years ago. London's already at 63. So this just goes to show that London is ready, and the time is right. And 2 years ago, London City Council passed a resolution officially endorsing Transit Vision 2040. So we're on the same page. And I think London is certainly on the same page with the many other cities and municipalities across the country that have also endorsed this transit vision. So I'm going to shift gears for a moment and provide you with a bit of context of rapid transit across Canada. There are 8 cities that currently have rapid transit according to the definition we heard a few minutes ago. Very simply, from west to east: Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City. And the question I'm going to ask and then answer is, why did these cities build rapid transit when they did? And what are some of the characteristics? And we too at CUDA are mode agnostic. We promote different modes for different applications. In fact, we've gone a step further just recently and redefined our mission statement that it's no longer just about buses and trains and ferries. It's about integrated mobility. And that includes all those linkages with cycling, with pedestrian amenities, with car sharing, bike sharing, all of which has to be integrated in a way that really provides that choice of mobility for our citizens. The first reason why cities built rapid transit is because the existing system was bursting at the seams. Yonge Street in the 1940s in downtown Toronto needed a subway. The bus congestion in Ottawa needed rapid transit. So there are those cities, and Ottawa, Toronto are obvious examples, that built rapid transit because the existing system, whether it was buses or streetcars, just couldn't handle the demand. The second reason is there was an event, usually a World Expo or an Olympics, that became a catalyst politically for building rapid transit. This was the case in Montreal with the Metro back in the 60s. It was the case in Vancouver with the SkyTrain in the 1980s. And there were other similar catalysts that in certain cities helped to build expansions and new lines of these rapid transit systems. And then there's the third reason, which is all about urban development. It's about the vision, and it's about aligning that with creating an atmosphere that's efficient, that's effective, and that draws people into the city. And there are numerous examples of that. And then if you look at technology, there are really 3 main types. There's what we call heavy rail, which would be the subway in Toronto, the subway in Montreal and Vancouver. For some reason, the city names didn't come out on this slide. But the three green points at the bottom, heavy rail, those are clearly Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. You've got light rail, that's Edmonton, Calgary, and the one on the very right is Waterloo, which is currently under construction. And then the ones at the top are the bus rapid transit systems, be they Ottawa, be they Quebec City, be they Viva in York Region, or Zoom in Brampton, and a few others. And then looking at the rationale, you can see here whether it was capacity, whether it was the events, or whether it was urban development. And clearly, if I had the opportunity, I would put London in the top at the very right, you will be next here in terms of rapid transit for reasons of linking in with the London plan and urban development. So just a quick look at, I mentioned Toronto, the subway that opened in 1954. It's hard to imagine a city the size of Toronto with the density of Toronto without a subway. And without the spine, it's really become the spine of city growth in Toronto, and the subway itself is reaching a point of saturation already now in terms of its capacity, and Toronto needs to look at other options and other solutions. You've got the Montreal Metro in 1967. These are in chronological order, which has been a showcase really for rapid transit development worldwide. The second big event in Montreal, of course, was the Olympics in '76. That was the big expansion of the metro, so Montreal has really been building on this kind of event catalyst direction. Edmonton in 1978 was the first modern light rail system in North America, the very first, a pioneer in that regard, and continuing to expand very rapidly. Calgary, the most successful light rail system, I would argue, in North America, the highest ridership of any light rail system in North America. An interesting contrast between the two. Calgary and Edmonton built their LRTs around the same time, but they did it very differently. Edmonton built a tunnel downtown, whereas Calgary cleared an entire street downtown of traffic and made it a transit-only thoroughfare, which allowed them to build it much more cheaply and much faster, and hence get a bigger network in place. And of course, '88, you had Winter Olympics in Calgary, which was another catalyst for expansion. Ottawa, which opened its bus rapid transit way in 1983, been tremendously successful and high-performing system, so much so that it's being converted to LRT, and it's the first and only bus rapid transit in the world, to my knowledge, that's being converted to light rail. So there's an example of how the technology can progress based on its success and its growth over time. I mentioned Vancouver and the SkyTrain, which is a very successful, driverless, fully automated system, very high performance, the backbone of transportation in Vancouver. And again, the 2010 Winter Olympics were a catalyst there for the Canada line, the new line that was built to the south and to the airport in Vancouver. Quebec City, a bus rapid transit solution that again is the main artery of the system there. They've looked at different options, but I think they're going to be going for upgrading what they call the Metrobus in the coming years. Around the Greater Toronto area, in York region to the north, in Brampton to the northwest, in Mississauga to the west, you have 3 examples of recently built rapid transit systems, Zoom, Viva, and My Way, My Express, which are integrated in many ways with the GO Transit and the regional system in the Greater Toronto area. And Winnipeg, lots of controversy over the years in terms of getting something built, but finally 3 years ago they opened their transitway, the first half of the first phase, but one of the main election platforms of the new mayor was to build this out and to build the entire network over the next 10 years. So Winnipeg, I think, is going to be on a roll in terms of expanding its rapid transit beyond the first line to a full network. And finally, and this is a segue to the next panelist, Waterloo, which has its Ion light rail system currently under construction and scheduled to open in 2 short years in 2017. Very impressive, the speed at which that's happening. And again, a very transformational urban development initiative in building for the future in Waterloo. So with that, I hope that's given you a short contextual introduction to the vision that transit can provide for urban growth, urban development, and sustainability for the future, and also how London's initiatives compare to rapid transit in other cities across Canada. Thank you very much.